The next question I have is, how did you become involved in the helpers, and when, Father?
Mike, I became involved in the helpers, I guess, almost from the very beginning. I had the opportunity to go up and to join Bishop Daly and to speak with him one-on-one, and to join a group, a procession, a pilgrimage, and that to me was that involved hundreds of people, and it was a very beautiful experience, especially because ordinarily we were just accustomed to just a few people or joining us for a prayer, a rosary in front of a clinic. But I see this as a tremendous ministry, along with, especially to enlighten people as to the reality of what is going on. Vast majority of people across the board, Catholic, Protestant, agnostic, and Jewish, just don't know, you know. They just see the buildings, they see abortion as a word, but it really doesn't engage the heart. These are human beings. This is not a Catholic cause. It took me a long time and many years in the priesthood before like a light went on, and I began to realize that I can't wear these vestments and believe I can proclaim the gospel and do all the other things ordinarily associated with the parish, the various associations, and not be very involved in this. It's primarily, of course, to do whatever I can to say to the world, this is intolerable to God. If it's intolerable to God, it's got to be intolerable to each and every one of us who profess to believe in God. It really responds to our very essence as believers in Jesus Christ, that we can't just coexist with this kind of violence. I thought of even the gospel story in this morning's Mass of Lazarus, the rich man, and the poor man, Lazarus. And you look at that story and you wonder, how did Lazarus end up in hell, Gehenna, or Dives end up in hell, and Lazarus, of course, ended up in heaven, the poor beggar. And the obvious reason was that Dives, the rich man, did not attend or enter into the suffering of this poor man, Lazarus. That's what got him into hell. So a lot of where I'm coming from as priest and Christian is concerned about the vast majority of people who buy this lie, pro-choice, and say, well, it's better for some human reason for these babies not to be born. They're going to have to answer to God. You know, the babies are victims, no doubt about it, but the mother and the father and the sit in the pew, do nothing Catholic and other Christians, they're going to have to answer, God forbid, eternally, you know, to God. And so the helpers of God's precious infants became like a tremendous blessing. Like all of a sudden it's like people are like me, like waking up. This is something I can do. This is truly an expression of Eucharist. Eucharist is not my just receiving my Jesus and feeding myself. Eucharist means really, if we understand the scriptural sense, that I'm called to receive the Lord and bring the Lord out into the world, and to be, by God's presence within me, just not tolerate within myself or around myself any kind of sin or violence. So helpers has been to be like when Gina and I, like last month when it was 10 degrees below or above zero in Philadelphia, and to look out there in that church and see 400 people at 7 o'clock in the morning, we know that the Spirit is alive and people are waking up. And they're going to spend a long time in cold streets of Philadelphia, and they want to be there because they know this is what the Holy Spirit of Jesus Christ is calling them to do. It's not Catholic action or Protestant action or even human action. It's God's will. Wake us up.
Gene, how about you? When did you get involved, and what got you involved?
Well, I became involved in the pro-life movement about 19 years ago, and gradually over the years have been involved in protests and in Operation Rescue and in going into classrooms. My wife and I, for about 7-8 years, would go into classrooms and teach courses, pro-life courses, and we've been involved in politics. We've tried all things, and now what we're able to do is to directly involve our Catholic faith in trying to renew the church in this and wake the church up to this sanctity of life issue. This is not a quality of life issue, but a sanctity of life issue. Just to add on to what Father said about the number of people, Bishop Daly asked Cardinal O'Connor in New York to lead one of the prayer pilgrimages of the helpers, and 5,000 people jammed the streets of New York to participate in the helpers of God's precious infants. There are now across the country over 30 dioceses have the helpers of God's precious infants being in pilgrimage at least once a month. And I became involved because in bringing to Philadelphia the vision of Bishop Daly, it centers around something that is so present to almost all Catholics, and that is our faith in the Eucharist, our belief that Jesus Christ comes to make us like himself. And Jesus gave us the Beatitudes and told us that if we wanted to be like him, which is our calling, to be like him, then the way we are like him is by practicing the Beatitudes. And two of those Beatitudes talk about righteousness. And in the Beatitude, it says that you have to hunger and thirst if righteousness is going to take place. If God's righteousness is going to be there, then you must be hungering and thirsting for it. It's not something that you can become a pew potato and get. So if you want to be like Christ, then you have to let that activism, that kind of hungering and thirsting for righteousness come forward. And what's needed is just an openness to the Holy Spirit, to allow the Spirit to come within us and fill us and give us that strength.
Well, having been involved to some degree with these marches that we did over the past 15, 20 years, I find that something is needed to change what has been happening. And from what you're saying in the pilgrimage is that maybe this is what is needed. I don't know how best you're going to get this information out across the country. This is actually my first time I've heard it, and obviously it's been in existence for some time. And I'm just surprised that I haven't read about it in the Columbian magazine from Bishop Daly, because he writes articles every month.
Well, Mike, in October of '93, the National Council of Catholic Bishops put out a statement urging all dioceses to try and establish a program of the helpers of God's precious infants. It is a way in which the average Catholic can become involved, can show his faith, can stand up and say, this is something I can do. I feel very comfortable being at the Eucharist. I feel very comfortable being in pilgrimage behind my pastor, my priest. I feel very comfortable being at benediction, raising my mind and heart in prayer and asking for the conversion of everyone involved in this killing of children.